The early morning mist clung to the surface of Mayfield Lake, turning the water into a silver mirror. Elon Musk parked his old pickup in the gravel lot and began unhitching his polished aluminum boat, a thermos of coffee steaming on the tailgate. For him, this wasn't just another outing, it was a sanctuary, a place tied to his father's legacy of preserving nature. The calm didn't last. The crunch of fast footsteps broke the silence. A woman in her mid-50s strode toward him, short blonde hair tucked neatly back, sunglasses perched on her head, a clipboard clutched like a weapon. "You can't park that here," she called sharply, her voice slicing through the morning air. Elon set down his wrench and turned, polite but steady. "I'm sorry? What seems to be the problem?" "This lot is private. Community use only," she declared. "You need to move that boat now." Elon straightened, his tone calm. "Good morning. Do you live here?" Her chin lifted. "I'm Teresa Holcomb, on the HOA board, and you're not on the list. The lake is restricted to Mayfield Hills residents. You're trespassing." Elon's eyes flicked toward the quiet dock and empty shoreline. "Didn't see any sign," he said evenly. "There's one posted near the pavilion." Teresa shot back, scribbling something on her clipboard. "You must have missed it. Either move or I'll call this in." Elon's expression stayed composed, but there was a weight in his voice now. "You might want to double-check your information," he said slowly, "because I think you're mistaken about who actually owns this lake." By mid-morning, the sun had risen higher, burning away the mist and casting sharp light across Mayfield Lake. Elon sat in his boat near the reeds on the eastern edge, his line drifting in the still water. For a moment, the world seemed calm again, until he heard the hum of tires on gravel. A white golf cart appeared near the dock. Teresa was back, her posture rigid, sunglasses now firmly in place. This time she wasn't alone. Beside her sat a younger man in a windbreaker, a radio clipped to his belt, the kind of makeshift security that homeowners associations like to parade around. They parked at the dock. Teresa stepped off first, her voice echoing across the lake. "Elon Musk, this is your final warning." Elon reeled in his line slowly, turned his chair toward the dock, and waved, his expression calm. "Good morning again, Teresa." She stiffened, unprepared for his composure. "I've contacted the sheriff's office," she announced, her voice sharp. "You are in violation of HOA regulations. You need to leave immediately." The young guard shifted awkwardly. He leaned toward her, whispering something, but Teresa cut him off with a dismissive wave. Elon stayed seated, his hands folded casually. "That man with you," he asked, nodding toward the guard. "Does he have a badge, or just the walkie-talkie?" The guard flushed slightly, but remained silent. Teresa snapped back. "That's none of your concern." Elon's gaze was steady, unyielding. "If you're going to accuse someone of trespassing on private land," he said evenly, "you might want to make sure you're not the one trespassing first." The guard shifted again, clearly uncomfortable. Finally he stepped forward. "Sir, can I ask what your business is on the lake?" Elon nodded. "You can ask. I'm fishing." The guard frowned. "Are you a resident of Mayfield Hills?" "No," Elon said calmly. "Then I'll have to ask you to come ashore." Elon leaned back slightly, a faint smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "Have you ever heard of Crescent Holdings?" The guard shook his head. "Can't say I have." "Well," Elon said, his tone light but deliberate, "they're a private trust. They bought this lake 3 years ago. I happen to be the sole trustee." Teresa scoffed loudly, arms crossed. "You expect us to believe that?" Elon cast another line into the water, not even looking at her. "I don't care what you believe. The paperwork is public record at the county office. You can look it up right now." The guard hesitated, glancing nervously between Teresa and Elon. Teresa's face tightened with defiance, but there was the faintest flicker of doubt in her eyes. For the first time that morning, the balance of power had shifted. By the next evening, word of the confrontation had spread quickly through Mayfield Hills. Rumors ran wild. Some whispered that Elon Musk was trying to seize control of the lake, while others claimed he was planning to build something that would shut them out forever. At the community center, the air buzzed with tension. Dozens of residents packed the room. Folding chairs scraped against the floor, voices overlapping in restless anticipation. At the front stood Ron Castile, the HOA president, looking weary as he adjusted the squeaky microphone. "Thank you all for coming," Ron began. "We're here to discuss the lake access situation. Mr. Musk has agreed to attend and share his side." The door opened, and Elon walked in wearing simple jeans and a crisp shirt. No entourage, no stack of papers, just calm, steady composure. He nodded politely, then faced the crowd. "That lake isn't just water and trees to me," he began, his voice clear but measured. "It's part of a legacy I've been entrusted to protect. When I took responsibility for it, the agreement with the HOA was clear. Access required respect and responsibility, but that agreement expired. And instead of cooperation, I was met with threats." A murmur rippled through the audience. Don Keeling, an older man in a worn fishing hat, stood up. "I've fished that lake for decades. It's part of our lives here. You shutting us out feels like ripping away a piece of home." Elon nodded thoughtfully. "I understand. That's why access was granted in the first place. But ownership comes with duties. I pay the taxes, I maintain the land. When those duties aren't respected on your end, when fences aren't fixed, when trash piles up, that balance collapses. I'm not here to take away memories. I'm here to preserve the place for the future." Before he could continue, Teresa shot up from her seat. Her clipboard clutched like a sword. "This is absurd," she snapped. "You're hiding behind paperwork. You don't care about this community, you just want control." Elon turned his gaze toward her, calm but unyielding. "Teresa, I didn't come to this community room demanding authority. I came to fish on land that legally belongs to me. You approached me, clipboard in hand, assuming I was an intruder. That wasn't a misunderstanding. That was a dismissal of facts. And tonight, I'm here not to lecture, but to make something clear. Respect is a two-way street." The room fell quiet. For the first time, even Teresa had no immediate retort. The morning after the heated meeting, Mayfield Lake looked different. Where tension and suspicion had lingered only a day before, there was now movement, chatter, and the sound of tools clanking against wood and metal. Word had spread through the neighborhood that Elon Musk wasn't looking to shut people out, but instead to remind them of their responsibility. And to everyone's surprise, he showed up at the lake again, not with lawyers or documents, but with a toolbox in hand. Billy Waller, the gray-bearded man who had spoken up at the meeting, was already there with his grandson, Lucas. The boy carried a small hammer, clearly too big for him, but his determination matched his grandfather's. Elon walked up, rolled up his sleeves, and joined them without ceremony. "Morning, Senator," Billy joked, handing him a nail. "Didn't think a billionaire knew how to work a fence." Elon chuckled, kneeling to help straighten a sagging post. "I grew up fixing things with my dad. It keeps me grounded." As the hours passed, more neighbors began arriving. Andrea Preston, the new HOA board member, brought a drill and organized a crew to repaint the dock. Families appeared with trash bags and gloves, children running around collecting bottles and cans from the shoreline. Even skeptics from the previous night showed up, curiosity giving way to a quiet sense of obligation. Teresa Holcomb, however, was nowhere to be seen. Her absence spoke louder than any words. Elon worked alongside everyone, not as an owner giving orders, but as another pair of hands. During a short break, Andrea wiped sweat from her brow and turned to him. "This is progress," she said, gesturing toward the busy shoreline. "The board is already drafting a new agreement, mandatory maintenance days, stricter rules against littering, real consequences for violations. It won't just be paper this time." "That's good," Elon replied simply. "Rules are only as strong as the people willing to follow them." By afternoon, the transformation was visible. The dock gleamed with a fresh coat of paint. The fences were reinforced, paths cleared of debris. Children planted wildflowers near the walking trail, while older residents sat together, sharing stories about the lake's past. The energy felt less like conflict and more like community. One man who had shouted at Elon during the meeting approached him quietly. "I owe you an apology," he admitted. "I thought you were trying to shut us out. But seeing you out here, I get it now. This place really means something to you." Elon nodded, offering only a small smile. "It means something to all of us. That's the point." By sunset, as golden light spilled across the water, the neighbors stood together, surveying their work. The lake reflected not just trees and sky, but the new sense of unity taking shape. Elon walked Jasper, his loyal dog, along the cleared trail, watching families laugh near the dock. For the first time in days, The air around Mayfield Lake felt calm, hopeful, and alive. And though Teresa's absence remained, her voice no longer defined the mood of the community. A shift had begun, one that no clipboard could control. 2 full weeks had passed since the conflict at Mayfield Lake had come to a head. What had begun as a tense standoff, with clipboards and accusations, had slowly transformed into something very different, an experiment in patience, humility, and community. The lake, once at the center of bitter arguments, now stood as a symbol of what cooperation could accomplish. By now the changes were visible everywhere. The shoreline that had been littered with bottles and wrappers was spotless, the fences mended and standing firm, and the dock gleaming with fresh paint. Wildflowers planted by children had begun to sprout along the walking trail, giving splashes of color to the once neglected paths. But the true transformation wasn't in the wood or soil, it was in the people. Neighbors who had once treated each other as strangers now exchanged greetings. Families who rarely spoke outside their own homes were working side by side. The arguments and suspicion that Teresa Holcomb had fueled were fading, replaced by shared pride in their work. Elon Musk had become, strangely enough, part of the rhythm of this small community. He didn't arrive in flashy cars or with media attention. Most mornings he showed up in jeans and a work shirt, toolbox in hand, Jasper the dog padding loyally beside him. Sometimes he helped replace boards on the dock. Sometimes he picked up trash quietly. Other times he simply listened as longtime residents told stories about the lake's past. He never gave speeches, never demanded credit, but his presence reminded people that respect was not just asked for, but demonstrated. On a warm Saturday afternoon, the neighborhood held its first communal event since the dispute began, a lakeside barbecue. Folding tables lined with food stretched across the grassy area near the dock. Smoke from grills rose into the air, mingling with the smell of charred corn and hamburgers. Children raced along the shore, some skipping stones across the water, others playing tag between the picnic tables. The air rang with laughter, conversation, and the occasional bark from Jasper, who had become a favorite among the kids. At one point, Andrea Preston, the new voice of reason on the HOA board, climbed onto the small wooden steps of the clubhouse porch to address the gathering. She spoke not like a politician, but like a neighbor. 2 weeks ago we were divided, she said, her voice carrying over the crowd. We were defensive, angry, and blind to our own neglect. But look at us now. The lake is cleaner than it's been in years. The fences are repaired. The dock has been restored. More importantly, we are here together, not arguing, but celebrating. And we owe that to the push we received, the push we might not have liked at first, but one that brought us back to what matters. Dozens of eyes turned toward Elon, who was sitting cross-legged near the dock with Jasper at his feet, sharing a quiet moment with Lucas, Billy's grandson, teaching him how to tie a fishing knot. Elon raised his head slightly, offered a small nod, but shook his hand dismissively, as if to say, "This isn't about me." Still the crowd applauded. Not the hesitant, polite claps of a meeting, but genuine. Sustained applause that filled the air. Elon stood, brushing the dust from his jeans, and walked toward the group. His voice, when he spoke, was calm but firm, carrying the same weight it always had. "This was never about ownership," he began. "It wasn't about rules or power or who had the final say. It was about respect. My father taught me long ago that nature doesn't belong to one person. It belongs to everyone willing to care for it. That's why I created the trust. Not to take things away, but to make sure they endure. When I was confronted here, yes, it stung, but not because of pride. It stung because it dismissed the very idea that we all share responsibility. What I see now, families working together, children learning, neighbors talking, that's what this lake deserves. That's what my father would have wanted." Silence lingered for a moment, heavy with reflection, before it broke into more applause. Even those who had once muttered against him found themselves nodding, realizing that his quiet firmness had steered them away from resentment and toward renewal. But standing further back, half hidden in the shadows of the clubhouse, was Teresa Holcomb. Clipboard still in hand, sunglasses pushed up into her hair. She looked smaller than before, not physically, but in spirit. For years she had carried herself with an air of authority, convinced that rules on paper made her the voice of the community. Now that authority had slipped away. People no longer clustered around her. The applause was not for her name, but for the unity she had tried to resist. Her jaw tightened, and without a word, she turned and walked toward the trees, her footsteps fading into the distance. As the evening fell, lanterns and string lights were hung along the dock, their golden glow shimmering across the calm water. Children roasted marshmallows on sticks, their laughter mixing with the gentle lapping of the lake. Conversations turned light, friendly stories of fishing trips, family memories, hopes for the future. Couples sat side by side, watching the sky turn from orange to deep purple. Elon took a quiet walk down the shoreline with Jasper, the cool breeze rustling the leaves above. He paused at a familiar spot where he had once stood with his father decades earlier, holding a fishing rod in hands too small for its weight. He could almost see the memory, the grin on his father's face as he pulled a fish from the water, the pride in his young heart. He smiled now softly, realizing that his father's lesson had come full circle. This lake had been a battleground, but it had become something else, a mirror. A mirror reflecting not just water and trees, but the truth of human nature, that respect cannot be demanded, it must be earned. That community cannot be preserved by rules alone, but by effort and humility. And that sometimes conflict is only the beginning of understanding. By the time the stars dotted the night sky, Mayfield Lake shimmered with lantern light and laughter. Neighbors lingered, reluctant to leave, as if they knew this was more than a barbecue. It was the rebirth of something fragile but strong. For Elon, it wasn't victory. It wasn't vindication. It was peace. The kind of peace that comes from knowing a legacy is safe, not because of one man, but because of many hearts working as one. And as he walked back up the path, Jasper at his heels, he realized something that would stay with him long after the night ended. Sometimes the most powerful change doesn't come from speeches or authority, but from quiet resolve, staying calm when others shout, standing firm when others doubt, and reminding people of what they already knew deep down. Respect, responsibility, community. Mayfield Lake would remember.